My entitled cousin is a narcissist who absolutely tried to ruin my biggest, most special day of my life, my wedding day. Everything she does, she has to try to one-up me here and there, everywhere. Well, I'm not going to let it slide this time, and I swear, nobody, and I mean nobody, is going to ruin my special day. The early years of my life were not so bad. My father worked as a builder, and though his work did not come very often, we were able to survive with the money my mother made from her work as a hotel manager. My parents were also conscious of the type of upbringing which I received. They would never fail to correct a child whom they saw veering off. We were all right, till my father stayed for about 7 months without being able to secure a building contract. During those times, we were sustained by the income from my mother. As expected, it became too much of a burden, and our rent was long overdue before we even knew it. The landlord served my parents a quit notice, and though I was too little to understand the whole situation, I knew, even as a child, that my parents were distraught. My father tried every possible means to raise the money, but nothing seemed to work. He even attempted to borrow from friends, but none was willing to give the kind of money which was needed at the time. It's funny how you find people and you call them friends to distance themselves from you the moment that you require a little bit of assistance. Well, while my parents ran about looking for a solution, their time ran out and the landlord came to forcefully evict us out of the home. Watching our things being thrown out, my father had no other option than to call his older brother who lived in a different part of the city. My father's older brother, my uncle, was not as broke as my dad at the time, though he equally had issues that he needed to deal with. After listening to my father's plight, he asked that we come live with his family while my dad sorted out some issues. There was no other option left to explore, so my dad just readily agreed, and we went to live with my uncle. That was the first time my path crossed with that of my cousin Judy. Judy is the only child of her parents. Amongst the not-so-pretty things which Judy is, she's self-exalting, narcissistic, who always just wanted to appear as the best in everything. She could ruin your reputation without giving it a second thought, so long as it meant she would be made the center of attraction and attention. My parents and I were welcoming into the home, and I discovered that Judy was carried about like an egg. While my parent did their best just to instill discipline in me, Judy's parents gave her free to do whatever she wanted. Her parents were not rich, but she still lived a glamorous lifestyle nonetheless. I think it's because they've experienced difficulty in getting a child. I took over the house chores, which Judy's mother did, and I was shocked that nobody ever compelled Judy to lift a finger. It got to a point that I had to talk to my parents about it. It was unlike them to see such a thing and just ignore it, even if the person in question was not their child. I complained to my parents, and to my amazement, they asked me to act like nothing was going amiss. I didn't understand it then, but looking back now, I can see the wisdom in their counsel. My father knew his older brother so well, and he did not want us to be thrown out of the home when he was not yet settled. My parents knew that a little confrontation could get them offended. I had to turn a blind eye to everything which I observed and was comfortable with, I said, but really I was uncomfortable. I got enrolled in the same school with Judy, and we were coincidentally in the same class. Her attitude in school was worse than it was at home. Judy always tried to dominate her cycle of friends. It was almost as if they either worshipped her or turned to their enemies. A few weeks after I had gotten enrolled, another guy came into the school. He was a class ahead of Judy and me. He picked an interest in me, though, and well, I liked him. Judy asked me to turn down every advance that he made. I know I hated the fact that Judy always tried to run the lives of people around her, but the things she said about the guy, it just got me scared. She made it seem like he was the devil. Not wanting to get into a mess, I decided to stay as far away from the guy as possible. It was no longer, however, that I discovered Judy throwing herself at him. I got confused. How could she be throwing herself at the new guy who she told me to avoid? I began suspecting that she liked him. She denied it when I asked her about it, and I swallowed her lie. But the truth always prevails. The guy, who was a year ahead of us in a class, passed out of high school and moved on to college. Judy wanted to sustain the relationship, but the guy noted that he was done with it. It was then the truth finally came out. Judy wept bitterly. She stayed back from school for a full week while lying to her parents that she was sick. I knew the whole thing, but I covered up for her nonetheless. I was glad when my father finally secured a job with the help of his brother. Within a few weeks, we moved out of my uncle's house, though we rented an apartment within the same neighborhood. Well, my parents insisted that I visit Judy's home every weekend when I had the chance. After a few months, Judy and I graduated from high school, and we were both preparing for college. My parents could not afford one of my choices, but Judy's case was not the same. She talked down to my school and just gloated about the fact that she was going to a very expensive, prestigious school, which, by the way, was superior to mine in every single sense of the word. Judy and I drifted apart the moment we got into college. Judy, she just never tried reaching out, and the few times when I did, our conversation always revolved around her. It was always about her. I learned the most of the things I did about her through the posts that she made on her social media handles. I was in my second year in college when I began dating a guy for the first time in my life. Even though I was new to the whole dating thing, I was not naive. My mother had seriously warned me against sleeping with a guy who was not married to me. The way she presented the situation made me fearful. This became an issue in my relationship with my boyfriend. He was patient with me throughout the early years of our relationship, and it looked like his love was genuine. However, as I got into my final year, he began mounting pressure on me to give in to his sexual desires, with the promise of getting married to me when we graduated. I was not ready to give in to his demands based on a promise which could have easily just been broken. So I pleaded with him to be patient, but he just claimed he had been patient long enough. He finally called me on the day of my graduation from college to officially break up with me. It was really painful, but there was nothing I could do. I had to heal and start a fresh chapter of my life without him. After my graduation, I got back home and just decided to visit Judy. It would be the first time I was going to be setting my eyes on her in years. Judy and I spent some time talking. We talked about a lot of things. I told her about the painful heartbreak which I just recently suffered, and rather than sympathize with me, she just began telling me about her awesome boyfriend, Austin. She showed me his pictures, and I would not deny the fact that the guy was handsome. I asked Judy if she and her boyfriend were making any plans, but she said that Austin was still trying to stand financially. And I quote, "We shall see where the future takes us." It's what she said. I thought it was not a wise thing to do, but I was not the one to give advice, obviously. Not to somebody like Judy. Besides, if I knew so much about relationships, then I would be in one. While we were still talking, a call came into Judy's phone, and she seemed to be irritated while talking to the person on the other end. She ended the call while the fellow was still speaking. After she had dropped her phone, she began telling me about the caller. He was a rich guy called Ralph. He had a rich background and had been pestering her for a serious relationship that could lead to marriage ASAP. Judy went on to tell me about how this Ralph of a guy, had been sending her expensive gifts just to get her attention. She showed me his picture on her phone, and I could see that this Ralph of a guy is not even close to as handsome as Austin. I asked her if she had told him in clear terms that she was already in a relationship, and she said no. It was just weird. She never turned down any gifts from him, neither did she tell him she was in a relationship. All she did was just tell him that she was not interested, knowing full well that a man who wants a single lady would keep on chasing, and she enjoyed the chase. We ladies can be very funny. Our conversation soon tilted from relationship to career, and Judy asked what I was up to, and I told her I was still yet to find a job though. I had some interviews to attend. She made this annoying remark about me not having a job or a boyfriend. She went on to tell me about how her father had helped her get a nice paying job at a firm. I left Judy's house that day feeling worse than I got there. My pain was not for long though. 2 weeks after her distasteful statement about me not having a job or a man, I went for a job interview at a brewery company, and it was a success. I branched at a coffee shop while on my way home, and that's how I met my fiance, Rex. Oh, Rex is an easygoing guy. And oh yeah, he's rich. Way richer than Judy's boyfriend, Austin, who's still struggling to find his feet financially in this hard world. If I was anything like my cousin Judy, I would immediately rub it in her face that my fiancé is richer than her boyfriend. Things between Rex and I progressed quickly, and we got engaged. He has paid a visit to my parents to declare his intentions. He's saying he's getting married to me. I would be going to Judy's place by next week just to tell her about my new fiancé. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. So, today's story is very interesting. It does have a few updates to get through, but a lot of the commenters are saying this back and forth between OP and Judy is so petty. I mean, how old are these people? I want to know your thoughts on it though, so drop your comments down. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. There's some very interesting things ahead of us. Update number 1's coming up. Guys, if you're new to the channel, the only way I ever ask for your support is simple. Just click that subscribe button. I really appreciate that, guys. And here's your update. Well, I'm currently not speaking with my cousin Judy. And if you've been following my story, then you would know that I am not to blame. I visit her, as I said I would, and it was a disaster. I told her about my fortune having it changed in a short while, how I had gotten a job and a fiancé who was interested in getting married to me. She did not seem too happy for me, as I had expected. I sensed it was some form of jealousy. The moment I told her that my fiancé was mega rich and had the kind of character I wanted in a man. Judy noted very clearly she would love, and I capitalized love, she would love to meet him, and suggested I set up a meeting between us. That was not an issue, see. My fiancé Rex was keen on pleasing me, and asking for a few minutes of his time to meet with my family would not seem like a bother. I spoke to him about it, and we got the meeting arranged at a very luxurious restaurant. Judy was already seated at the venue when Rex and I arrived in his car. I could see Judy's shocked expression, as she never believed I could date somebody like Rex. After the introduction was over, we began having lunch, and most of the conversation was done by Rex and me. Judy seemed distant and disinterested. She was busy checking on my fiancé Rex, and I mean that in a negative sense. She was looking out for one fault or the other, which she could use as a basis to make me leave him. I know this because it was exactly what happened. Judy began talking down to Rex days after the meeting. She initially came like she was the only one looking out for me, for my goodness, but the high school experience where she had me turn down the advances of somebody, it was red flags, and it taught me a lesson to be wise. She claimed guys like Rex, who seemed to be good to be true, were cheats, whose goal was to sleep with me. I refuted her claim as not being true, because Rex and I had spoken about the whole ordeal, and he agreed we would keep sex until marriage. The more I refuted Judy's claim, the more she became violent about the whole issue. It got to a point where she now said Rex and I both deserved each other, seeing we're both dumb. Well, I was furious. Everyone who I had introduced my fiance to had no issues with him. Judy, for some obvious reason, was seeing a monster in my man. I verbally lashed out at her. My voice was loud to the point her mother rushed to the scene to find out what the issue was. I was too angry to explain to Judy's mother, and I simply warned Judy to keep away from my relationship. I've never given her a piece of advice to run her relationship, and so I did not need her to give me any. I'm sure that the moment I break up with Rex, she would immediately just rush in to take my place. What a jerk! I stormed out of her place and headed straight home. My anger was so much that I ignored greeting my parents for the first time in my life. They obviously sensed something was wrong after a while. I explained to them everything that happened. I told them of the high school incident, and they did not need me to speak further, as they knew the kind of character Judy had. It's been days, and Judy and I have not spoken. My mother's been encouraging me to make up with her, but I don't think it's something I want to do right now. Judy's not the kind of person who would do something good for you without getting something better in return. I've seen it play out over the years, and I know better. If anyone is to offer an apology, it has to be her. My apology would only strengthen her pride, build her ego up, and blind her eyes to seeing her wrong. I think I'm better off with her out of my life. Update number 2. Well, I've made up with my cousin Judy, but it wasn't easy. My parents had to put a good amount of energy to get me to make up with my cousin by making the first step of reconciliation. A step that my cousin should have made, I'll be honest. I got to her house, and before I could say anything, she simply blurted out, "I know you're probably here to apologize, and so I forgive you." I was supposed to be saying that, but her pride and ego were in play. I apologized to her parents for creating a scene at their home the other day, and Judy finally took me by surprise by inviting me to her engagement party. I was shocked, because the last time we talked about Austin, she noted that he was not ready to get married, as he was still trying to find his feet financially. Well, I wondered what could have made both of them just decide on getting married so soon. Maybe she wanted to use the marriage as a medium to get Ralph off her back. Whatever the situation was, it was simply none of my business. We had just made up because she meddled in my relationship, so I knew too well to start poking my nose where it wasn't needed. The engagement party was just a few days away, and that's when Judy's invite came. What if I was not present at her home? It meant she would not have told me about the engagement taking place last weekend in the evening. It was a nice occasion. With the way everything was packaged, you would think Judy was getting engaged to somebody who's, well, super rich. Or somebody from a very wealthy background. I was in for a shock, though. Yeah. Put your seatbelts on for this one. Midway into the ceremony, Judy presented her fiancé to everyone, and to my amazement, it was not Austin. It was Ralph. I could not remember Judy talking about her giving Ralph a chance. All I knew was that she had earlier told me about the fact that she could not get married to him because he was not as physically attractive as Austin and she simply didn't love him. It all made sense, though, seeing that Austin could not afford a lavish party like that. Judy paraded an expensive ring that Ralph had given to her a while, just introducing him to folks. She added that he was very rich, and she did not need to say it. Anyone and everyone present there could already tell. You could practically smell it in the air. I suspected that she was in for the money, but hey, it's not my business. My suspicion was confirmed a few days later in a very unexpected way. Barely a week after Judy's lavish engagement party, I received a call from her late one evening. She had a very odd request. She wanted me to call her parents to lie that she was at my place, and where she would be spending the night as it was too late to come home. I lied that the reason her mobile line was switched off was because she was asleep. Judy's request did not sit down well with me. I had to know more details about the whole thing before I could lie on her behalf. I asked where she was, and she claimed she was at a friend's place and did not want her parents or anybody to know. If she was at a friend's place, why was she hiding it from her parents? There was no way this friend was Ralph, as she would have told her parents so. I came to the logical conclusion that she was spending the night at a guy's place because she would have told her parents the truth. If it was a lady, well. Judy promised to tell me more about the whole thing when we met, so I went ahead to lie for her. I did not need many lies to convince her parents. They believed me. However, things almost went horribly wrong the next day. At about 7 o'clock in the morning, her fiance Ralph drove to my house looking for his woman. I was caught off guard. He and Judy had an appointment very early that morning with a marriage counselor, and she was not picking up his phone. He had already been to her place where, well, he was directed to my house. He asked me about Judy, and I claimed that he just missed her a few minutes ago and she was about to leave for her place just a few. He thanked me and left. The whole thing was becoming so clear to me. I would be meeting with Judy in 2 days, and I would try to find out a way she was lying and find out why, and possibly cheating on her fiancé barely a week after she got engaged to him. Oh man, this is a mess. Update number 3. I know you guys are probably waiting for this update to know if my suspicion about my cousin cheating on her rich fiancé is true. Well, it is. I met with Judy yesterday, and I wanted to know what happened and why she had me lie to her parents and her fiancé. I did not want to overly push the issue to the point where an argument or fight broke out. I simply established a conversation and waited for the right moment to access her phone. Judy did not give me any reasonable excuse for her behavior that day. Nothing. She tried her best to evade the question, actually. I kept calm. I thought hard about how to get my hands on her phone, and that's when I just brought up the plans Rex and I was making of our wedding, which was supposed to be in 3 months. I informed Judy that Rex and I would be getting married in 3 months' time, and we had chosen a date that was significant to me. Well, to be honest with you, that part was simply not a lie. Our wedding was fixed on the first anniversary of my breakup with my first boyfriend. It was significant in the sense that rather than brood over the obvious pain, I was going to celebrate my marriage to a better man. I then went to tell Judy about the venue which I planned on using. It was a very expensive place in the city, and most rich folks use the event center just to organize their ceremonies. I told Judy how I had visited the place the previous day, and how it was even better than what was shown online. I was told that the event center had not been booked on the day when Rex and I wanted to get married. So, I did not immediately book it, as I thought it best to not make any hasty decisions without talking to my partner first. It was after I'd spoken with him that we both agreed to rent the place. I asked Judy to lend me her phone so I could use her browser to show her the place and how I planned to decorate it to have my dream wedding since my battery was down. Judy unsuspectingly gave me her phone. I was still making use of it when her mother called her attention. The moment Judy left, I began going through her WhatsApp messages, and I saw it there. Chats between her and her supposedly ex-boyfriend, Austin. In the messages they shared, Austin talked about how he had a nice time with her the previous week. Judy, in turn, thanked him for always satisfying her needs like no other man. I quickly took screenshots of the chats and forwarded them to my WhatsApp inbox, so I could read them later on while I was settled. I went on to delete it from her phone so she does not discover what I've done. Judy almost walked in on me doing it too. I killed her suspicion by showing her interior images of the event center and how I planned on having it decorated for my wedding. It did not take long for me to leave her house afterward, as my curiosity had something to feed on. I have to stop this post here, as Rex would be coming over to pick me up so we could go to book the event center for our beautiful wedding day. Update number 4. It's been last week since I last updated, and it's because I've been busy thinking about different ways to ruin Judy's wedding. Before you start wondering how I became the villain of my story, let me go ahead and give you an explanation. Rex and I got to the event center where we wanted to book it for our wedding, and it turned out that somebody else already rented it. It was a disappointing news, to say the least. I went home feeling bad, as it meant Rex and I would have to move our wedding ahead and look for some other places to use. As we took a few days to ponder on what our decision would be, Judy began sharing her wedding invitation card. I concluded Judy to be the devil the moment I went through the invitation card she had given my parents. Her wedding date was the date on which I was planning on fixing my wedding. But that's not the most painful part. Get ready for this. The wedding venue was the event center which I had told her about. She was the one who had booked the event center and deprived me of having my dream wedding on the very day that I chose to. To say that I was mad would be an absolute understatement. I moved down to Judy's place in anger. "How could you do this to me?" I asked her as I threw the card in her face. She knew what she has done and she did not try to feign ignorance. She just said, "Sorry for not discussing it with you. My fiance and I thought it best to have the wedding ASAP. It's no big deal. You can always have your dream wedding after I'm done with mine." The selfishness in Judy's words was too disgusting. That was always been her life, wanting to come first before everyone, wanting to have the best about everyone. She had seen that I had a fiance who was richer than the guy she loved, and so she decided to get engaged to a rich guy. It did not matter if she loved him or not, she just wanted to prove her point that she had ended up with a richer guy. It's the same narcissistic and competitive mindset that drove her to go behind my back and take the event center and my date. I was angry, but I decided to hide my anger so I could get back at my entitled cousin. My demeanor just changed and I claimed I would set up my wedding after she was done with hers. "It's no big deal. You can help plan my wedding while yours is still ahead." That's what Judy noted. I don't know if planning her wedding was supposed to be some form of consolation for making me postpone my own. All the same, I readily accepted. It was the perfect opportunity to make Judy pay. I'm now part of her wedding, planning committee, and that is the biggest mistake she's ever made in her entire life. Update number 5. Final update posted by OP. Title is Revenge. Guys, revenge. It's the best served cold. And I've just done that to my entitled cousin Judy. She had made me an integral part of her wedding planning. My role was to pick up the cake from the baker and the flowers too, which I would make sure were properly positioned where needed. The interesting part of the whole thing is that she stole the idea of my dream wedding. The kind of flowers, cakes, and arrangements. I was tasked with picking up the cake and flowers which I would ensure was placed properly. Since I had prior knowledge of what the cake and flower would be, I decided to use it as a medium for revenge. I got someone to make me the exact kind of cake, but rather than use more sugar and less salt, I had the baker use just salt to bake it. And I told him how much we love salt. Lots of it. I equally had somebody make a replica of the kind of flower my cousin wanted. Using inferior clothing materials, I had everything all set, while waiting patiently for the wedding day to arrive. I even anonymously tipped off a local radio station to conduct a live interview. There was no preparation or anticipation of a live interview by the local radio station. It would come as a rude shock. The final part of my plan would be enacted on the wedding day. The big day finally came, and I was happier than the bride because of what I was about to do. I took the minivan which Judy had arranged for me, and I picked up the cake and the flowers. I picked them up rather than take them straight there. I made a stop where I had the identical cake and flowers made. That's how I took the tasting cake and the fake flowers to the wedding venue. Everything was set. The whole wedding ceremony had taken place and the reception was about to begin. It was time for me to reenact my plan. I sent Ralph the screenshots of Judy cheating on him with Austin while they were already engaged. The date of the chat and the pictures of Austin were part of the images, of course. Ralph, who had been too busy with the wedding, finally checked his phone when the cake was cut, and he was surprised at what he saw. He saw the images and recognized Austin to be among the guests. This was when the refreshments were being served. Ralph immediately rose from his seat, went to Austin, and punched him right there in the face. A fight ensued. While commotion was busy going on, I deflated the, quote, liquid poop product, which I've gotten for just $10. Once unleashed, the super concentrated liquid that had an overwhelming stinky smell began evaporating, and the odor was bad. The guests were surprised to find the groom fighting his guests, but they were taken aback when they took a bite of the cake. It was at this time that the radio station came in. Everything was covered live. After Ralph was held down from being beaten up by his guest, he produced evidence to show that the wife he had just married was no good and a cheater while they were already engaged. Everybody was stunned. It was highly embarrassing for Judy, but her parents were the ones who were most embarrassed. They left the scene, and the guests began spitting out the cake they had eaten as it was terrible. The smelly atmosphere did not make matters any better. Ralph promised to divorce my cousin Judy as he could not live with a cheater. Judy was left alone, crying. Not even the guests wanted to sympathize with her, and I, for one, don't feel any kind of guilt or remorse. Am I the a-hole for sabotaging my entitled cousin's wedding? Alright guys, let's talk about this revenge story. A lot of commenters were saying, hey, I think OP seriously went too far. I mean, maybe a little bit of petty revenge style is good, but this was just much. I mean, you ruined so many people's days. We're talking a cheating girl, a fiance who basically had his life ruined in one day, a cake testing that went horribly wrong, and you name it, even the live news coverage crew. I mean, how much worse could it possibly get? So, there were people in the comment section that were saying, hey, this was just too much. But I would like to hear from you guys, so drop it in the comment section. Do you think this form of revenge was nothing more than petty, or it needed to be done? Let me know your opinion and where you lie with that. If you're new to the channel, my name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories every single day, so if you're into that kind of thing, stop on by, see what the topic is, and make sure you subscribe, as it does support me a lot. Alright guys, have a great day and I'll catch you tomorrow. I'll see ya.